Good afternoon, everyone. Many thanks for joining this webinar. A few bits of housekeeping before we kick off. You've joined the session in listen-only mode, but you can use the question panel to raise any points, and we will be going through those at the end. We are recording today's session, and you will get a recording to that either later on today or first thing tomorrow. I'm Warren Butler, Marketing Director here at Preact, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Martin Prosser, who will lead today's presentation. We'll then be joined by Daniel Hunter from our Managed Service team to answer your questions about the unified interface. So today we're going to be featuring examples of the types of controls and solutions that are being developed for the new interface, as well as highlighting some of the main changes and additional capabilities which haven't been available in the deprecated Dynamics web client. If your organization has recently transitioned to the new experience, we hope you find this is going to be a useful overview to increase your familiarity of the new UI and to identify how you can make further improvements to your Dynamics environment. If you haven't yet moved over, we'll aim to increase your understanding about the unified interface. As a reminder, for online environments, the Dynamics 365 legacy web client won't be available from the 1st of October. After that time, the unified interface will be the only interface, so we'd urge you to make this a priority and plan on making your transition well in advance of this deadline to avoid any interruption for end users. Please do get in touch if you need any assistance during this process. We'll answer your questions, help you test and configure the unified interface, and support you in rolling this out to your users. We can share more detail about these steps in the Q&A, but to kick off the main presentation, I'll now bring in Martin, who'll start by looking at the navigation in the new UI. Thanks, Martin.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Warren. Yeah, just to start off with, I think it's beneficial if we can just cover off a little bit about the navigation, how the apps work, how you can restrict some of your existing users using the browser version, and they can only see the legacy app. Talk a little bit about dashboards, how we can embed Power BI dashboards. We can then move on to the form changes and some of the controls that we can now add onto the forms. We can then talk a bit about Power Apps and how we can embed these now into the new UI, and then sort of any other sort of things that might crop up at the end, basically. So a good starting point is obviously once you've enabled the new UI in your organization or you've upgraded to this, first thing is quite noticeable is the first drop down arrow on the navigation bar at the top. As soon as you do this, obviously then you can flick between your different apps. Now, I'm not too sure if any of you know that, by default, if you was to click onto the one at the top here, that takes you to the old legacy system, basically, where you have the drop down shelf at the top here. Now, obviously you can leave this turned on for admins so they can get to it. Equally, if you are in one of your apps over here on the left hand side like this, a way to get to the admin area would be to click on the cog and then click on here on advanced settings. What that then does is it loads in another tab, and you can then see it only gives you the settings area. So the back end of the system, if you need to then customize, change your themes, add your workflows in and things like that, it shows you the back end of the system. That's one way of doing it. Equally, when you're in this area, if you go into the My Apps setting, you can see the one here that says Dynamics 365 browser. That's the one that takes us to the web client and not the unified interface. You can click on the three dots here on the ellipsis button and you can click hide for all roles. That's one way of turning it off. If you are using the Power Platform now, and all you need to do in order to turn this off for you, the web client for your everyday users, is to go into the environment, find the environment here, click on the settings option, expand product area, click on behavior, and then over here you can see it gives you the option to say show legacy app to everyone, not just the admins. Of course, at this point as well, you can rename what this looks like. So this is how it appears and how it looks as well. You might want to call this administration error or something like that and turn this off just for administrators if need be. And of course, save your changes. All that would mean is then, you're restricting your end users to, when they come in here, they will only see these UI apps that have been enabled over here on the left-hand side. So that's how we can do that in terms of, restricting the app, the web client, and it's now just the UI going forward. When we're in here, in terms of navigation, we can now collapse the sitemap. You can still see the app, the icons, and you can see as and when you scroll over these, it will tell you what area it is and what entity it's looking at. But it just gives you more space, on the form basically to work on your screen. Whereas before we had the drop-down shelf at the top and we can navigate between different areas of the database, it's now controlled down the bottom here. So you can see if I click on here, I can flick between sales, and then I can flick into marketing, and then in this area you can configure what entities are available in here. You can set this all up again. We can show you how to do this in the sitemap, so you can have different areas if you need to. But the navigation's down here at the bottom now, as opposed to a drop-down shelf at the top. So that's how we can navigate between those. A couple other things to note as well. Obviously, Quick Create is still up here. It's still the same thing. We've got the Quick Create forms. We've got Relationship Assistant up here as well. So if you've enabled this and you've set up your parameters to start, monitoring emails that you're setting reminders on, and you want to look at opportunities that have had no action in, say, certain 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever that consists of, you can set all of that up in the background. It all appears in here, but you can get to that now just by clicking on the little sort of light bulb at the top here, basically. Likewise, you can obviously have this embedded if you've already got this as well, already in a dashboard, then the same thing can apply. You can have your relationship assistant over here. Talking of dashboards, we can now have the standard Dynamics dashboards, as you can see, like this, with Relationship Assistant and our views and our charts and everything else. We've now got the ability to come in here and embed a Power BI dashboard. So if you've already set up some Power BI dashboards in your Power BI area, which obviously you can get to over here, click on More Apps, and you can then click on Power BI over here. It will take you to your Power BI area. As soon as you click New Power BI Dashboard, it will then ask you which dashboard you want. So is it in your workspace? Is it one of these? And then, of course, you can then see it presents you with all of the dashboards that you've got available in your Power BI area, basically. And then you just pick one of these, and then you can embed those. Once you've embedded those, then you can see it splits them out. So you've got System Dashboards. It then appears under your My Dashboards area, but you can see it has the Power BI logo. So I just pick one of these, Case Report, for example. This might be a customer service manager looking at a nice Power BI report, cases by month, cases by day, cases by hour, cases by type, cases by year. There's a whole load more visuals that you can actually physically see, and some nice heat maps if you need them. The visuals are just a lot better than just views and charts of Dynamics, which is why a lot of our clients are now, preferring to go with a nice Power BI report. Equally, it might be something for your sales team, for example, something like this. To have slice and dicing capabilities in Power BI, and if I click on an option over here, it then filters the report to look at what I need it to look at, basically. Really useful. And the good thing about having Power BI in here, you don't have to just surface information from Dynamics. Power BI now obviously has connectors that can link to multiple information. So we can connect the data to multiple data sources as well. We don't have to just surface information from Dynamics in here. Now the other option that we've got as well now is having an interactive dashboard. So something like this in the customer service hub, there's already some out of the box dashboards. You can see something like this. If I click on Tier 1 dashboard, you can see if I just then change these to be in a custom time frame, or you can see you can apply filters over here on the dashboard itself. If I just apply this and say, let's just go back a year, for example, just change that and apply that. You can then see, looking at my nice dashboard in here, this Tier 1 dashboard that I've got, you can see it's then showing me, these areas like this. So my activities, but this is interactive now. So if I was to click on here, I've got the option then of tagging more than one of these records in this dashboard view. And then I can do something with this. So if I need to merge them, if I need to delete them, edit them, I've got those same options I would get if I was in a system view, basically. The other option you've got is when you click on here as well, if this is obviously this view here that you're looking at is looking at cases, and different to this one over here that says My Activities, you can see My Activities gives me different options. Whereas this one obviously is looking at cases. I've got the option then on a dashboard to click on New Case. From here, it then loads the Quick Create case form over here on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side. And then obviously you can set out all of the fields that appear in this Quick Create form as well if you need to. Really useful for that. Obviously, then you can see here you've got the option then of switching to a tile view. So it's just giving you these nice big figures basically. So based on these individual views that we're just looking at, it's giving you some nice totals. And if you want to then combine the two, I'll look at say tier 2 dashboard, and again let's just look at, I don't know, last quarter or something like that. There you go. So you've got some nice big figures over here on the right hand side. Again, looking at some views and some charts that are coming from your Dynamics database. So that's an interactive dashboard, and we can embed those now into Dynamics as well. Out of the box, like I said, you get a couple of these with the Customer Service Hub, but we can also create interactive dashboards now for any of the apps in the database. So just moving on from the dashboards and navigation, we're going to go talk a bit about some of the new controls on the forms, some of the additional features that you might see, and some of the what we call custom controls, sort of PCF controls as well. Just showing you as well, from a navigation point of view, obviously this does appear on the form, but if you're in a system view like this and you click into one of these records, obviously when you are on the form, if you need to then go back to the next one in the view, instead of having to click back into the view and then click next, we get the little icon up here. So if we pop this little section out here, you can see it's looking at the last system view that you was on. Of course, you can see the form, you can edit the form, you can do what you need to do in here on the form. And then if you need to click to the next one, so if I put something in here, there you go, just save that in there. Click the next one here, it will save your changes and then it moves it to the next record. So you're just working through a list of these views as well, basically in here. So that's quite a nice feature which a lot of people have sort of taken a lot of benefit from. And then of course when we're on the form itself, a couple of the new controls that we can see in here. One of the first ones being the subgrids. So over here on the right hand side, this is traditional form with a subgrid. So over here you can see there's a list of contacts that work at this organization, a list of opportunities, cases. What we've now got, if I just change the form here to this interactive experience form, what it does is it collapses the subgrid, so it's a little bit user friendly. You haven't got to scroll down and see all the subgrids. You can still see all your contacts there, and then if I click on here, you can then see all of the opportunities. If I click on here, you can then see all the cases. It's still all the same subgrids, but it just collapses them in these little icons over here, as opposed to having all of the subgrids on the form. You've still got the related option here, so you can still see all related records. So from a navigation point of view, you need to see anything else. You've got everything else that's still set up in terms of the navigation point of view, but it's just a nice way of sort of freeing up a bit of space on the form if and when needed. So just change back to this form. One of the features that's been quite used as well in terms of alongside the contact subgrid over here, you can see I've got a list of people that work at this organization set over here on the contacts subgrid. What we then get is we get this new org chart option at the top here. So if I just click open org chart, you can see it basically then shows you a list of all of these people that we've got set against this account. And then you can move this around, so you can collapse this. If I want it to collapse that, I can click on the little collapse option there. You can see it collapses it. If I want to then expand it, I want to see who's his boss. I want to then see who he works alongside. I can expand and contract these. If I wanted to make Paul Smith, if I wanted to make Jake, say, Paul's boss, for example, then all I can do is just drag Paul into Jake, and now you can see automatically then it makes Jake his manager. Jake's manager obviously is Amy. Wanted to collapse that, then you can see it just shows you the tree, and if I wanted to expand that, I can see who's under him. I'll pull those in as well. You get the principle, don't you? So then if I wanted to make John under Paul, I could just drop John under Paul, and then again you can see a bit of a tree here. And of course you can then customize this, so IT manager, that's his job role. Anything else that's added in here as well, you can see all the information around that. If and when you click on one of these records, you can then click from here as well, open contact record, and it will take you into their individual record. You can see why it was showing up job title, because that's the field that was displayed in there basically. So we can then see his job title here as IT manager. When we look at the hierarchy on the org chart, we can see that's why he's in there as that role. So one of the other things that's really useful, again, really matter which form you're on, is the timeline control. There's been a few changes to the timeline in the way it works. One of the first changes is the ability to track an email. So obviously if we've got the database set up and we've set it up with your mailboxes in the same Office 365 tenant, then you will get things like this. So, you know, I'm logged in as my user here. There's clearly an email. If I just go over here and look at my inbox, you can see there's an email in here in my inbox that's unread. I'm logged in as the same user. And because I'm logged in as the same user and I'm in the database, when I'm in the database, obviously I only see this because it's sent to my individual mailbox. So it says it's not tracked, only you can see this email. Now I don't have to go over to my Outlook and then click track or set regarding. You can see here, you've got the ability to open the email, or you've got the ability here to click track. If I then click track here, we'll do track pending, and then of course it will then bring that email across. If I just refresh here, you've got the nice little refresh option as well in the ribbon at the top here. It's a new feature instead of having to keep refreshing the whole screen. And now you can see it's stating tracked email from Jake in here. If I go across to my Outlook and I just refresh this, then you'll just see, you know, if we refresh it, then over here on the right hand side, if you've got the pinned window into Dynamics, and you see all the details around the individual over here. This is all fully customizable as well. But you can see obviously track pending. Within a few minutes time, this will then say that it's basically been tracked. You can see the emails that you have tracked as well using the new features. Once you track an email in here, you get that little icon here to say track to Dynamics. If I just untrack that, just to show you as well, you can see that little icon then disappears. So that's now disappeared. Obviously then if I want to track it again, you can then see any email that you've copied, you can see then it does this little icon here, track to Dynamics. Really useful, so you can physically look through your inbox and see which emails have been pushed into the database and which ones haven't. But that's really useful in there. Equally, we've got a new option now as well to set up what we call enhanced emails. So if we are sending an email, we can send an email from the timeline in the same manner. You can go on here and click new email. Instead of it taking up the whole screen, it pops out in this sort of little window down here. You get the same options as you had before, so you can see you've got your signature, you can insert another signature if you need to. You can start typing the email in here, or you could do an insert template, exactly the same as it used to be before. If you were to type out your email, then obviously you've got a few more options in here as well in terms of the email editor. Like I think you only had 4 or 5 sizes in here before, but now you've got quite a few more sizes in here, a few more extra fonts that you can then use, just a few more options in here in terms of what you can do before you send it. Obviously then you can add in any attachments and things like that in here. But one of these features now, obviously if we set this up, if you've got the Sales Dynamics 365 for Sales app license and not the Pro license, then you can turn on this email engagement. What that means then is if we are sending an email in here from the timeline or anywhere from the database, we're automatically following these emails. We can then send our email immediately just by clicking on send, or we can set a reminder to send it later if we need to, and we can set a reminder to say follow up and check this email. But essentially if you do that and then you send the email out from the database, what you'll then see eventually, if I just refresh that, you'll see the email against the timeline. You can see it will show you in here. Obviously the email sits against this. You can see it's telling me now against my timeline there's a few things that I've missed. You can see click to filter. There's a couple of new activities, one of these being an email. But eventually, once I've sent that out, if and when he then opens it, you can see you get things like this in the timeline. So this email I can see was sent from CRM. There's the tracking token there. It was sent on the 11th of February, but it's telling you then in here a few analytics around this when it was opened. So if you send the email from the database, if you then click into this, just pop this one out here, let open record. Then where you've previously sent the email, you've said, yes, check that out. Down here, then you can see, oh, well, this actually was opened on this time on this device. And you can see how many opens it was. If I had an attachment against this and I was following the attachment, I'd see how many times the attachment's been viewed as well. You just get a few of these analytics in here with the email engagement feature. Again, really useful to have that turned on and enabled. It doesn't cost anything extra for that. Now if we just click back to Jake, you can see you've still got the ability to add in notes if you want to use notes on the timeline here. You've got the ability to just type your note in here and click add note, and it adds the little paperclip attachment in there if you need to do that. You've also now got the ability, obviously you can see here, to add any of these extra activity types. If you want to add posts, and you can add a note in here as well. But if we click on the little filter option here, what it enables you to then do is obviously filter out the activities that you're seeing in the timeline. So a couple of other options you can see in here. Obviously you've got the ability to filter by record type. So if it's just notes you're looking for, you can filter just by those notes you've added. If it's just activities, you can obviously tick just the activities. It will refresh your timeline. It will only show you activities. You're now not going to see any of those notes that you've added in the same way. If I just click on here again, just unfilter that, you've then also got the ability to filter out specific types. So if you just wanted to look for emails, if you just wanted to look for certain statuses and things like that, if you just wanted to look at, based on modified date, for example, last X amount of days, then you can see the last 7 days, there's 3 obviously in here that meet my criteria. There's 16 active, based on activities here. If I was just to click appointments, then obviously you can see it then just filters out and just shows you those appointments. So a couple of nice new extra features in the timeline there in terms of being able to obviously sort what you see based on the filters that filter into the timeline. One of the other things that we can then also do on the actual timeline itself, you can see when we enable the timeline on the actual form, a couple of the form controls we can then do is, in here, obviously you can rename it if you need to. What do you want to see? It might only be that you want to see just selected, and you only want to see activities and notes and posts. You don't need to see, not everybody uses posts. You might not want to see those, when a quote's been won and things like that, all those additional posts that you get. Obviously ascending or descending order, the amount of records and everything else that you can filter. This is obviously only available for the new unified interface, which is what we're talking about. But one of the major benefits that everybody's getting benefit from in here is the activities sorting by. So whereas previously this was only ever sorted on the modified on date, you've probably had this where you've then had a cascading rules because somebody's changed your ownership or something, and then an email 6 months ago is now at the top of our timeline. You've now got the ability to come in here and change that. It doesn't have to just be on modified by. It could be on the due date, it could be on the actual end date, start date. All of these other date fields that you can now use. It's not just defaulted to being modified on, basically. And then if we just flick back to the actual contact itself, if we just go in here, one of the other benefits as well of the timeline, phone calls. So a lot of people used to say in the past, where you clicked add phone call here on the timeline, on the social panel, that it automatically just defaulted to being a completed phone call. Now, if we add a phone call in here, you can see obviously it loads the quick create form. It doesn't have to load the main form as well, which is one of the other benefits of doing this. So you can customize the way this form looks and renders. If I just put a date in here, for example, you can then see in here it's automatically then set. I've got this set to appointments. Let me just unfilter that. You can see I've just unfiltered that. Automatically it's an open activity. This will sit in my activity list based on my due date, and it will render in the timeline based on whether it's created on, sorted on, all those other date fields you've got. But you've now got the ability, once you've actually gone into this, you can see open record. We open the record, that's an open record. We can then add our details to that and everything else. And then once we're finished, we've got the ability to click close activity here. And then you can see it changes then the status up here. So it's not automatically defaulting to being a closed phone call every time. You've now got a few more options in here when you're on your timeline by logging phone calls. So you can set your follow-up phone calls for future from the timeline now, which you never used to be able to do. And one of the other things that we can do as well on these forms, if you've got a user or contact in the system that has a Microsoft mailbox account, then we can see their nice Microsoft profile. So I just flick over here to one of my activities. You can see I've got a call from and a call to. If I just hover over my name, you can see automatically it shows me a nice little profile card. I can update my own individual profile. Equally, I want to see my colleagues like Chris. He's obviously got a Microsoft profile. You can see here, I can click show more files, click show more here, and it just shows me his Outlook card basically. So there's a whole load of other things that you can do in here, from emailing the individual just from their Outlook profile option in here. That's most of the normal form changes. And now what we can do, we've also got the ability to add in what we call custom controls to the forms. So instead of the forms being sort of just all very rigid with field level data, we can have some nice icons and we can have different controls added to the form, and there's loads of different options now that we can do. But just to show you a few, we've got this nice PCF control option over here, contact tags. So this is something that we've just created. It's a way of just tagging these records. So it might be that I might have seen this person. You can see just if I type in an option in here, can you see it's telling me, oh, okay, it might be that this is what you're asking for. No, I'm not actually, so I'm just going to do a different value. So there you go, and then I push enter. Now this is tagged, and then I could actually pick something else from here as well. Okay, this is now tagged to this. So if I met this contact at one of these two events, I've tagged it quickly in here. The other option then we've got as well, if we're on an opportunity, for example, we want it to tag somebody over here just by starting to type something. You know, this might be part of a project. These ones that appear here are ones that are already tags that have already been set up in the database. If they're not, then you can create your own. But if they're already in here, then you can pick from one of these values. And you can see in terms of the colors and everything else in here, this is fully controlled by yourselves. That's one nice option. So it's just a tagging option, but you can see a variation of the visual that it looks like on the form. Basically, it looks really cool. One of the other things that we've done as well is this sort of last activities option. So a lot of people have said to us, you know, I've got a tasking here, an email, an appointment. It'd be really useful to see the last time something happened. So based on the activities here, we've got the option over here to then set the last task activity time and date when that's come through, any emails that have come in here, any appointments, the last time and date of the appointment as well. And then up here, this is the overall last activity. So based on all of these, you can see I've enabled appointment, email, phone call, and task in here. These are the four main tasks that we've got. And based on any one of these, this was the last activity based on all of these. Renders over here on a nice little, again, a better visual, so you can see an image of the user. You can set the fields in here. So I've just set this to be owner and the subject and the due date if I need to. This is all controlled though in the solution. So over here, obviously the Preact solution. You can see what entities do you want it to display on, and then you can come down here and you can specify all of the different types of entities that you want. What statuses do you want to show? Because not everybody wants just completed activities. It might be that you want to say, okay, show me appointments that are still open or scheduled, ones that have been cancelled. You can set all your parameters in here. The fields that render you can set in here as well. Do you want it to display based on end date, or do you want it to be displayed on due date, for example? We can set all of this. And of course, because I've set this against the account entity, it's really useful the way that it works, that you might want to pull information from the child account record, so the contact. Typically you don't have a phone call with the account, you don't have an email with the account, it's with the individual contact. So if you say yes, show related records, then in here you can go through and you can specify, it might be that you want to pull information from the opportunity. So then you can see opportunity account. You can pull all of that in as well. So anything then that goes against any of these child rolls up to the account as well. It's really useful just to see from an account manager's perspective when something's happened and what times and days, and just to see it on here on these nice little forms. We've then also coupled that in with a neglected record solution. So we can set some parameters in here to say, okay, if this isn't neglected, then say, you know, nothing's happened with this for 1 month or 2 months or something like that, then over here, all it will do is it will then just put these into change the status on the record to say this is now neglected, and then you can have something over here in a nice system view that says neglected accounts. You can see the status reason, then after a month of no activities, the status reason gets set to neglected. So it's, again, these are the ones that maybe, you know, need some action or something needs to be happening against these. If you want to set something with this using a bit of automation and a workflow, again, we could then add a phone call against this for somebody to then go and do once they complete it. Then the status will change because it won't then be neglected within that time period. That's a couple of the solutions that we've added in terms of PCF controls, and then there's a few other custom controls that we can add to some of the forms as well. I'll just go into one of my my leads here. These are just out of the box custom controls. So in terms of, like, you know, the plus and the minus sign, because this app's now available on an iPhone, tablet, whatever you want to call it, these sorts of controls are a lot more mobile phone friendly. In terms of having a slider, you can have a slider bar instead of just adding in a value, you can see. In terms of having this star rating as opposed to a drop down that's just a value 1 to 5. These are all extra controls that we can enable and have on the form. Over here, if I wanted to then add, certain numbers in here, 5 digits and then a space and then other digits, we can prefix the format of these fields if we need to. Again, really useful if you're on a postcode and you start putting in lowercase letters. You come out of here and then this could then prefix this, and you can then see like this, it can capitalize it. There's a whole load of options that we've now got using some of these custom controls. And if I then just flick over here to my contact form, just to show you a few variations of this. There we go. On here you can see things like this. So option sets, instead of having 5 values, it might be that you want to see a nice little emoji like this. Products of interest, different, again, the color I've set to orange. This one I've set to, red upon selection. Yes, no, thumbs up or thumbs down, as opposed to just a normal yes, no field. A lot of these visuals in terms of addressing user adoption are a lot better than just having the out of the box controls that we want. And then again, if I want to add in a different person in here, normally we've only got one option in here for the owner field and things like that. If we don't want to use a subgrid, then we can just have additional things in here like this. Whole load of options that we've got around now, these new extra controls, if and when needed. We can add these to the form to make the user adoption a lot better than it ever used to be. And finally, I just wanted to finish up with explaining a little bit about how the Power Platform's working. So Power Apps, model driven apps, and sort of Canvas apps really. So a Canvas app is something like you can see on the screen here. Typically, installed on a mobile device or a tablet. You can access this via the browser if you need to. But it's an application that's built from the ground up. So we've got our Preact Expenses app here. If you want to do a quick expense, you can click into here, go through and quickly add your expenses in, on the fly. As and when you then get to the end of the week or the month and you need to link those, then we can link them. If I click into claims area here, you can see we can sort of have an active claim. So this is my February's claims, for example, this month. If I wanted to see the ones that have been submitted in the past, which ones have been rejected, if I want to see the ones that have been approved, I can click on history and see all these that have been approved as well. But essentially all of these tabs and what they do, we've added the logic to this. So if I just click into claims here, you can see then I've got a lunch receipt, I've got a couple of journeys through company car. If I need to add an expense to this, I can click over here and add, and then obviously I can go down here and I can then say, okay, well, I need to add dinner in. I click add dinner and give it an amount, add some comments if I need to, add any other fields in here. If I need to then add a receipt, yes or no, you can see just a bit of logic on here as well. If I say yes, then we click add receipt. It will take you to your camera, or you can, if you're on a desktop, then you can load something from your machine that you've stored locally as well if you need to. Essentially, I could do all of this. I could click create, adds all this information in. Oh, better turn that off. There you go. It's telling me to add receipt because I set it on. And then it'll go into in here like this. Come the end of the month, you can see then we've got a nice total in here. The user can then save this and submit this. So that's a Canvas app. The Canvas app is typically used by the end user. That will then, by clicking submit on this button here, will feed all the information into what we call a model-driven app. So you can see then this is a model-driven app. Looks very similar to Dynamics, but it's built on the Common Data Service. So you can see in here, it's just called Total Expenses. Equally, you can see if you are using the Sales Hub or the Customer Service Hub of Dynamics down here, you'll have all your apps down here. If you was to click on all apps and search for it, obviously then you can see you'll see a list of all of the model apps that you've been given permissions to see in your organization. If you want to pin those over here on your home screen, then it's quite easy just to go, okay, well I want that, pin this app, and then you can see it appears over here. So you haven't got to go and find it every time, you can just click into it from here. But essentially, just by building the Canvas app and adding all those details in, that's the end user experience. Now, somebody that would be managing the expenses, for example, in this scenario, would come into the model-driven app here and just work with the entity tables down here. So if I click into claims, you can see there's a nice claim over here. This would be the claim that's been submitted by the end user. We can have some different buttons at the top here if we need to. But if I click on expenses, then I'll see a list of all the expenses that have been submitted. Over here then I can click on update and I can approve this or I can reject it. Can then go back into the Canvas app as rejected status if we need to. In here it can flag up as red and everything else, but essentially all I'm really trying to show you is that we can have a Canvas app on a mobile device for the end user to fill out certain criteria, and that can feed into the common data service tables in the cloud, whereby we can then create any custom tables, any of these entities, columns, views. We can really sort of have a custom process to channel this. And then of course in here you can see I've just got a list of all vehicles. There's a list of all those vehicles in here. Expense types, if I need to add to those where you saw those popping up in the app, parking, taxi, company car, and all those details as well. So these apps are, this is just one example of the expenses app that Preact have got. There's a better video online we can circulate if you guys want to see that in more detail and all the workings of that. But essentially, yeah, these apps are either standalone like this, model-driven apps, or Canvas apps. But equally, these can be embedded into Dynamics as well. So if there's a nice, visual that you want to see and some logic when you click on this layer and then it loads another layer and shows you more information, we can embed these into Dynamics now as well if we need to. And just another variation of this, Visitors app is another one that we've produced, a Power App for this. So essentially it sits in your Visitors reception on an iPad or a tablet. You can sign in, sign out. You can click sign in here, fill in all your details, sign this. If you wanted to take a picture, we can do all that as well. If you need to clear this signature off, we can. Click on here, and then redo it. There you go, I've just signed that, and then I can click sign in. What happens off the back of that, it might be that you want to then send an email to the person they're visiting or something else like that. But again, you can see just by clicking on here, it loads another screen. And this is, again, something that we've built from the ground up. When we click on the home button, it just navigates back to the main screen. So that's Power Apps. And as I said before, they can be embedded into Dynamics as well. So there's a reason where we need to build something from the ground up that doesn't exist. We can build it and we can embed it so it sits within your Dynamics if need be. That's Power Apps. Moving on from Power Apps, just wanted to finish off with showing you a couple of the new features that are coming with the new upgrade, the new release that's due to come out. Kanban boards. Like me, you're probably wondering what Kanban means. Apparently it's visual. It's a visual. What have I got here? There you go. It's Japanese for visual signal. So it's basically something like this. You can see on opportunities. I'm looking at all opportunities in a view. Once we've enabled this control in the database, you can see if we go back to read-only grid, it's just the normal system views that you're familiar with. If I click on Kanban, then you can see over here, it loads up this Kanban board. You can then, at the minute, on opportunities, you can flick between status, or if you wanted to have this showing your process flow stages, you can. It's either or. Just looking at the statuses in this one, you can see then it's showing me all open statuses, all one status is lost, and it's telling me that there's 4 out of 4 here for one. There's 10 out of 81 here that are open. Again, if I click into that, it loads on a sort of a pop-out screen, so you can then work on this. You can fill out all the details that you need to. Close that off. Obviously, then if I need to change the status on this, I can just go, okay, well, I want this to be a 1 status. I can just drop this and drag this over here, and then it will just do the same thing as what you'd do if you clicked on close as 1 on the opportunity. You can fill that out, fill in all the details, and if it doesn't give you an error message because I've got active quotes open, you get the principle. If I just close this one off, look, it's lost. Drag that over there. Come on. There we go. Close as lost. That's cancelled. If I want to identify a competitor again and everything else that you might want to fill in there, you can. Same thing that you would normally do. Click OK, and then you can see it moves it. So because it's looking at statuses, we're just using these boards, and obviously you can then scroll up and down. It's just a better way of working on here like this. And one of the other features is obviously the ability to, it's a better looking filter criteria that they've applied to the views. So when we look at this, you can see it's a smaller drop down that appears on these views. It looks a bit more tidy, separates your system views from your My Views with these sort of bold headings. It's really useful. But when we click on the column headings now here to filter, then you get the option of these little options. So sort A to Z, Z to ascending or descending order. And when you click filter by, it's just easier. So you can change these views in here. So equals, and then there's all your values. So if I just do that and then click apply, then you can see. So it's just a little better on these filtering capabilities on views. These are also apparent if you're using a subgrid as well, and you've got these views on those subgrids as well. Thanks for listening, guys. And I think we're going to just now move into the questions and answers. Cheers.